morning. This is Mary Gannon Kaufman for our third week of reflections on spiritually supporting priests and our families. The topic of this week is looking at developing the priesthood of the heart. Now that is a curious topic. We looked last week at developing our feminine gift, and the week before on what is spiritual motherhood. Today we're going to look at what the Lord is calling us to. That this desire to pray for others, and particularly for the church, is an indication that grace is moving in our own hearts and giving us an invitation to greater contemplative union with the Lord. He's asking unique and different things from us. Today we're going to look, in this reflection, we're going to look at something called developing our inner cloister. Now, many people have read about this in the lives of contemplative women, many of them cloistered nuns. For instance, Teresa of Avila spoke of this, and Jane de Chantal, who started the Visitation Order. They talked about finding an inner cloister, an inner convent of the heart. Now, we're going to look using the works of Venerable Concepcion Cabrera. And what's unique about her is that she is a laywoman immersed in the world. Now, Pope Francis wants us to consider this. He talked about developing the power of the Spirit of holiness from our baptisms. This capacity to form this inner resting place with God is really a capacity given to us all, laity and consecrated religious women alike, to find a contemplative union with God no matter what we do. Pope Francis gave us this quote that early Christians had nothing but the power of baptism that gave them their apostolic courage and the strength of the Spirit. He said, do baptized people of today really believe that they have this inner power, this inner capacity to find union with God? Or do we just get awash in the everyday humdrum of making a living, caring for our families, and we never really realize the depth of the holiness that we're each called to? That's the beauty of Concepcion Cabrera, Venerable Concepcion's life. She shows us the power of doing our ordinary activities of our vocations with great love, and how we can develop a life of union with God in the midst of ordinary activities. And that really we're going to find as we continue unpacking this beautiful call to spiritually support the church with our prayers, a call to grow in a very delicate union and holiness with God. Now, this is a quote from Concepcion, that the Lord told Concepcion this. He said, I want to make of you a saint known to me alone. I want you to be a model of hidden virtues, with nothing different externally about your life from the outside. I want your eyes fixed on me. You are to live cloistered in the very inner sanctuary of your soul, for that is where dwells the Holy Spirit of God. It is in this sanctuary that you must live and die. There are your delights, your consolations, and your repose. It is not enough to immure your body to be a nun. No, you must never leave this inner sanctuary, even in the midst of your outside obligations. This constant interior recollection will facilitate all these activities of your life in the measure that you practice them in God's presence. And in this sanctuary, which no one else sees, is found true virtue and the contemplation of God in the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit. There we have it. We have an example or a model of hidden virtues of holiness in the ordinary events of our day. Now, let's take an ordinary experience, maybe one that seemed to stir you up, where you had inner movements of heart. We'll look at how to recognize and cultivate the inspirations of the Holy Spirit in one of our following weeks when we look at discernment. But one thing I've noticed is this call to spiritually support priests always seems to cultivate or facilitate a lot of spiritual movements. Some of them are good and move us towards God, and some of us give temptations and desolations, things that move us away from God. Think about an experience maybe that stirred your heart, maybe where you even got angry with someone. What could the Lord be showing you? The Lord wants us to be on a pursuit of virtue. One virtue that I see that a lot of women need to work on, myself included, is our, sometimes unconscious desire to want to control situations around us, control the situations in people. We don't like hidden surprises. But when a situation arises that causes us to be startled, out of our comfort zone, let us use everything as a way to form a virtuous life, to be emptied of anything that could cause us to be attached to our own agendas. That's in essence Concepcion facilitated a virtuous life. This pursuit of working with our obstacles will help us form this inner cloister. Now, what are some practical ideas we might use to form this inner cloister? Concepcion had a very interesting way. When the Lord first showed her this, she said, Lord, I have 8 kids. She used to have 9, one of them died, but at this point, 8 kids. How am I going to keep my mind centered in you? Won't my kids be running down the street? It'll be hard to focus. What did the Lord say? Now remember, Concepcion had kind of a mystical relationship with Jesus. So she heard these words in her heart. They just made an impression in her heart. Concepcion, I'm very much aware of all the demands that you have in your life. What I ask of you is not to be forgotten. Learn how to glance towards me and go about your life, and then everything will be an offering. Concepcion considered these words. They seemed reasonable, and maybe they seem reasonable to you too. Concepcion shows us this is how she did it. She would be sweeping the floor, for instance, and she would imagine, using her imagination, that the Lord was looking at her, was observing her doing this. So she would glance towards him like he was glancing towards her. Then she would go about working. She'd walk through a doorway. She'd glance towards the Lord and offer that moment of walking through the doorway to him as a little offering. She would talk to one of her kids. She would imagine the Lord was looking at her while she was speaking with her son or her daughter. So everything she did was in the presence of God. It was like she was dancing with God. She would notice the moment, glance towards the Lord, and offer that moment as an offering to him. And so in everything, she kept coming back to this inner place of awareness with God, life with God, a union with God. That's how she cultivated this inner cloister. She also she would have the practice. It's hard to do this through the whole day. What she tried to do is being particularly aware of the Lord glancing at her from the hours of 12 to 3, the hours that the Lord told her he hung on the cross. Maybe that's something you could do. During the hours of 12 to 3, try to make it a practice whenever you start something new. Glance towards the Lord, be aware that he's with you, and then go back to what you're doing. So you're going to learn how to percolate your day with little glances towards the Lord. So every moment he is with you and you're acknowledging him. Great way to develop humility. In the Kaufman house, it's kind of a family joke now. How many times have I been talking to my teenage kids before they leave for high school, and I say, when you go to a new class, Patrick or Tim, glance towards the Lord. So everything can be a little gift to him. So when they tell me about their day, they say, yep, Mom, I glanced towards the Lord. Okay, what we're trying to do is to develop a heart that's open, that's surrendered to the Lord, this living fire of the Lord. Now, I just switched slides and you see a beautiful image of a heart in the middle of a cross. The next reflection, we're going to go into this in much more detail, how women that pray for others are called to cultivate a union with the cross in a very specific way. Everything that we're talking about, I want you to think specifically for your own life. When I share something of these beautiful mystical writings, notice how your heart is moved or what your mind seems to think about. So you want to think about a practical resolution to developing an inner cloister. I want to introduce and give you a little background about why the cross is important for this inner cloister. We're called to deep contemplative union, but why the cross? Well, one day Concepcion was in the Church of Saint Ignatius in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, and I've been there. It's a beautiful little town square in San Luis Potosí. She was in the church, and one day she was kneeling in front of the altar before Our Lady's statue, and she was drawn into this beautiful inner reflection. She could see light, and in the middle of this light and her mystical prayer experience, eventually she saw a dove, and she was captivated by the power, the impact of this, seeing this light on her and seeing this Holy Spirit in her midst. She questioned the Lord, what does this mean? He didn't tell her anything that day. She returned the next day to pray about the same time. She had a beautiful way that she percolated her life with prayer. She worked in adoration in the midst of her ordinary family demands. And the second day, she also was brought into this inner light, the Holy Spirit. But then the Lord went deeper. She shows to us the power of repetition. When we have a spiritual movement, you want to start your next prayer time, returning to that beautiful place of prayer and see if the Lord goes deeper. This day the Lord went deeper with Concepcion. In the midst of this light, where the Holy Spirit was present, she saw this big wooden cross. And in the center of the wooden cross was a beating human heart, a living, beating, moving human heart, surrounded by light and also with a crown of thorns. And interestingly enough, a very faint small cross above or at the top of this heart. And the Lord showed her, women, you are a woman and you've been created to love in a very delicate way. I am drawing you in to share the intimate sentiments of my heart. And that's where I want you to pray. This is essence your mission, is to gradually in a progressive way to climb onto the cross yourself. Moment by moment, as you glance towards me from this little place of union within you, I want you to come onto the cross with me. So all the events of your life, even the little things that bug you, that make you angry, that give you make it are difficult for you to interact with and deal with. Those are invitations in the midst of the moment to come in union with my cross. And let me tell you, you and all the other women that are praying for our church, praying for others in a heartfelt way, I'm inviting you into a deep union. My cross didn't start on Calvary. It started at my incarnation. From the moment I was present in the world, I had a desire, a hope that I would bring graces to others to renew them. And that's what I'm asking you to share, Concepcion. From your inner cloister, I want you to live in union with the intimate sentiments of my own heart. Now, we are going to look at this. We're going to look at how Concepcion Cabrera did it. And we're also going to use the lives of Catherine Doherty and Elizabeth Lesueur. So I'll close this reflection. Remember, I want you to be particularly sensitive to your own movements of heart, your own thoughts and feelings, and I want you to develop a capacity to offer the present moment, even in the midst of your reactions, as an offering to the Lord. So something stirs you. Say you were frustrated with a turn of events you didn't expect. Offer that rub as a little offering from your heart for Jesus. Or maybe as you're driving to work, as you're encountering traffic, or you're holding back a sharp tongue or a sharp email. Make that an offering for the Lord. So we'll be together in just a moment. Thank you very much for joining us. We talked about the inner cloister of the heart. God bless you.